Hi everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of Mrs Mummypenny Talks. The latest season 4 is focusing on chapters of my book, The Money Guide to Transform Your Life, which is 1 year old in September. So I thought, great chance to celebrate it by getting in experts for every episode. So we have the wonderful Sara Williams here to talk about debt. Now, very scary subject, but don't be scared. We are going to have an open and honest conversation about all different types of debt. And Sara is, I don't know anybody else who knows more about debt than Sara. That's quite a claim. So you are a debt advisor and you have your own blog, which is Debt Camel. Yeah. Also has a new Instagram channel, which I have to shout out because you're very keen to promote your Instagram channel. And
it's very new, and it'd be nice to have some more followers on it.
Yeah, no, I've been sharing lots of your posts to my readers because actually your content is really, really good.
So yes, so it's at Debt Camel. It's a silly name, but the advantage here is you'll remember it.
Exactly. Well, that's half the battle with blogs. How many personal finance blogs are there? Hundreds.
A lot.
A lot. Don't we know? But we've both been doing it for a very long time. So but you've been a debt advisor for 20 years.
Yes.
And you've done a lot of one-to-one work with all manner of different debt situations. So you are very well placed to know everything. So I was going to just allude quickly to the episode that came out last week, which was with Faith Archer, another mutual friend of ours who Much More with Less blog. So in episode 3, we talked about budgeting. We went right back to the basics of how to keep a spending diary and then how to create a budget and all the different elements you need to include in that budget. And we did start to talk about debt, but and I just wanted to it was a natural flow from episode 3 on budgeting into debt the following week, because I think a lot of people when they get to that point of understanding how much they spend, they realize that their expenditure is more than their income, and you've got some debt, and maybe you have a bit of a crisis moment of, oh, I know I've got debt, I'm going to ignore it. And then there's some kind of clarity point where you take your head out of the sand and address that debt. Maybe that's certainly what I went through, but yeah.
I mean, that's one common route into debt advice, is people looking at their budget and realizing it doesn't really add up anymore, and it certainly isn't going in the direction they want to be going in. The other big route into debt advice is if people get into a real mess and start getting nasty letters and phone calls, and then they tend to go get debt advice, and the first thing we say is, well, let's have a look at your income and expenditure, which is a debt advisor's term for a budget.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about 3 different debt situations. So the first one we're going to talk about is almost the situation I was in 2017, where I took my head out of the sand, actually prompted by a conversation with you way before, where you remember we were sat in a burger restaurant near Liverpool Street. And I think at the point I had about £8,000 worth of debt, and you didn't like judge me or anything. You just said, oh, that's gonna maybe affect you if you're doing a mortgage application. That's all you said, and that planted the seed. I then got into loads more debt, and finally sort of came to terms with it, and I had 16 grand, but I could afford my minimum repayments. Right. So that's the first debt situation. Then we're going to talk about the situation where you need to make some adjustments to your budget, which is almost similar to the situation I was in. And then that frees up some money where you can then make your minimum repayments. But then the third situation we're going to talk about is when you can't make your minimum repayments on your debt. So should we start with the first one?
Yeah, let's start with your situation.
You uncover scary amount of debt, and my story is very well publicized in like every single newspaper going and TV channel going, because I just wanted to come clean and share it with everybody, and that it's not shameful to be in debt.
There's so much secrecy, if we were sitting in this burger restaurant, somebody at the next door table, you wouldn't know by looking at them how much credit card debt they've got. If you look at your next door neighbour who's got a nice new car, you've no idea if they own the car or if it's just another pile of debt they've acquired. And we don't talk about it very much in this country. So seeing people's real stories, I think, is very interesting. It's interesting to people across the sort of finances, whatever your situation is, you can sort of see that there are other people in different situations. And, if you come across somebody who's in the same situation as you, that's even better.
Yeah, and it's such a common situation. So you'll probably know the stats better than me, but what percentage of like the UK population are in slightly unmanageable consumer debt?
So the Money Advice and Pension Service reckons it's about 8 million. I'm not quite sure. I always have that figure in my mind. I don't think that's been redone post-pandemic. And there's a lot of people who are in quite an uncertain position at the moment. I mean, there's still nearly 1 million people on furlough.
Wow.
And so they are all going to be ending soon. And some of those don't really know whether they're going to have jobs to go back to. And some people who are self-employed, it's not really clear whether their businesses are going to be able to survive if they've got through this far, but they've got more debt. So there are a lot of people in an uncertain situation, but 8 million is a large figure anyway, and that was pre-pandemic, and it's not got better. Let's put it that way. It hasn't got better since then. So there are a very large number of people who have got a large amounts of debt or smaller amounts which are large to them, because it's not the absolute size of your debt that matters. It's the debt in relation to your income. So somebody may be quite rightly looking at £2,000 or £3,000 debt and finding it just impossible to manage, whereas if you've got a great job in the city, then £16,000 the debt, even if you're paying interest on it, probably isn't that much.
Yeah, well, so the situation I was in 2017, so I had quit my corporate job in 2015, where I was earning a lot of money. I was earning about 80 grand a year, and I carried on that lifestyle beyond leaving EE to when I was running Mrs Mummypenny, and obviously I couldn't afford to maintain that lifestyle, hence that's where the 16 grand's worth of debt came from, keeping up with the Joneses, which is a common cause of debt in this country. But I wasn't earning that much money because it was only 2 years since like Mrs Mummypenny had started going properly. I was maybe earning, I'm quite open about all these numbers because I think we need to be open about these numbers. I was earning maybe like £1,500, £2,000 a month. And my minimum payments on that debt were £200, £250 a month. And that was just minimum payments. So that it didn't feel out of control because, 2,000 compared to 250, that's like an eighth of my income. But I thought about it all the time. It was always on my mind. And when I turned £200 monthly payments into how long it would take me to clear that debt, it was like, I can't do the maths, like 5 or 6 years it would have taken me to clear the debt. And some of it had interest on it, maybe like 2 or 3 grand's worth of it. Some of it was on an interest-free card, but then I was stressing about what if I come to the end of my interest-free period and I can't get another interest-free deal.
Yeah, particularly if your salary's dropped, so you're going to find it harder to get one of those. I think a lot of people can carry a lot of interest-free credit card debt and think it's not really proper debt. It's like somebody gave you free money.
I didn't think it was, I never thought it was real debt.
For 3 or 4 years now, so well before the pandemic, it was getting harder and harder to get really good interest-free deals. There were fewer people offering them, the sizes weren't so big, and the fees were a bit bigger, and the terms were shorter. So instead of being able to get a 3-year one, you get a 2-year one, or a bit less than 2. So you're on a sort of constant worry cycle. And when you like when you find you're thinking about this, at all time, if you're just driving somewhere to pick up the kids, if you find yourself thinking most of the time about money rather than about what's for tea or something like that, and if it's the first thing you think of when you roll over in the middle of the night,
yeah,
it's not good.
Yeah, exactly. And it's quite difficult to go back to those sort of early dark times where it just felt well. So how I approached it and how I approach everything in life is I come up with a plan and I take control and I talk to someone. I didn't feel that my debt was so uncontrollable that I needed to talk to a debt charity, but also because of our circles that we move in, we know a lot of friends who know a lot about money. So I reached out to Faith, and she was the one that held my hand through the whole sort of debt process. But the very first thing I started with was writing a budget. I did go back to basics, and I cancelled everything I possibly could, and I hugely restricted my life, which was really difficult. And I'm not I don't know if it was a good idea or not. Like, I did things like no spend months, which it saved me 300 quid in a month, and that 300 pounds extra went straight into debt repayment. But
on the other hand, you would have thought about money every single minute of a month when you're doing a no spend month, and it's particularly hard when you've got children as well. If it's just you on your own, you can be more determined about this, but I think you have to be quite realistic when you got children.
And what floored me, so I April 2017 was when I first started paying off the money. But every time I hit a summer holidays, as you mentioned, children, that's when I screwed it up, basically, because I got the mum guilt really badly the summer of 2017 and the summer of 2018, and I paid for like holidays each of those years because I was like, I can't restrict my children from having 6 weeks of fun in the summer holidays or not have a holiday. So I ended up going backwards in my debt journey over those summer holiday periods. But then I suppose the not by luck, it's through hard work, but my business was also starting to pick up, and like busy times in my business are around sort of September, October, November, December. So I was almost like able to claim it back. So I hit it with a two-pronged attack. It was increase my income, which I'm self-employed, so I am able to do, not as easy for employed people, and I really cut all my expenses right back to the bare bone. And for more tips on that, go listen to episode 3 where Faith and I talk about budgeting. We don't need to cover it again, but we need to talk about the different strategies of debt payment. So I had debt in, and it's better to explain it with an example. So I had debt in 4 different ways. So I had 2 different 0% credit cards. I had a business credit card at about 20%, and I had a holiday credit card, which was charging interest as well, where you get cheap foreign exchange rates. So how I did it, which I think is quite different to your preferred method, is I used is it the avalanche method? Is that the word you used to describe it? So I paid off the debt with the interest first.
Right. You paid off the higher interest charging.
Because I'm a mathematically minded person. It worked for me to pay off the debt where I was paying extra interest first, then hitting the 0% stuff later, even though it was probably like, that was still 13 grand worth of debt on 0% cards. But there's the snowball method, which is an alternative method. You explain it.
So the snowball method goes after the smallest step first. And then when you clear that one, you go off to the other one. So both of these methods, you make the minimum payments to all of your debts apart from one, your chosen target debt. And the question is how you pick that one. Do you go for the one which is the highest interest, or you go for one that's the smallest? If you go for the highest interest one, like you did, you minimize the amount of interest you pay overall. If you go for the smallest one, you get a big psychological boost when you've now got down to just 3 credit cards, not 4. And then you go for the next one. And both of these are called sort of snowy names, snowball and avalanche. And the theory is that you start off with your snowball, which is the amount of extra money you can pay to this one debt each month. It might vary in a month, but how much extra can you overpay this debt? And like a snowball, if it's rolling downhill, as it goes, it gets bigger and it goes faster. So as you're paying off some debt which has got interest on it, you're paying off quite a bit of interest and a little bit of the principal. But the next month, because you paid off that bit of principal, the same size snowball will pay off a bit more of your debt.
Yeah.
So you are starting to speed up and it gets faster as you go along. So that's why it's a strange name. I don't really care what people want to do. It's really psychological, I think. Logically, you pay less interest if you go after the higher interest debt. But particularly at the start, if before debts isn't too bad, if you see people with 7 or 8 or 10 debts, it's really quite nice to get some of them out of the way.
Yeah.
And to feel you're really making progress by not having to manage so many of these at all. And what I say is, first of all, you've got to make a list of your debts. You can't, you absolutely got to be honest with yourself and make the list. How much do you owe and what's the interest rate is? And I think most people, when they look down it, then know perfectly well which debt they want to get rid of first. It might be that really high interest one. Obviously, if somebody's got a payday loan or some really bad credit end, they really do want to get rid of that first. But it might be a debt to your sister. There might not be any interest on it at all. But
family debts.
It's up to you which debt you want to get rid of first. And if there are much for muchness, then go for the higher interest one. But if some of them are a lot smaller and some of them are a lot larger, and you'd like to bash off some of the small ones, do that. It's not a religion. That's what I say. Make a list, decide what you go for one debt, and go for that one. You don't want to keep thinking about it each month and decide which you're going to switch the Capital One card to the Barclay card. Just pick a debt and go for it. And then when that one's gone, look at what's left and pick the next one. I don't mind which you do. What's important to do is to have a plan and to keep going.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how long it's going to take, but it's just have that plan. And I'll also say, because I had a plan and I didn't stick to that plan, is you have to, that's just life, right? Things happen that may well make you go backwards, but it's you referred to dieting earlier on, but it's very similar process of dieting to paying off debt. You might have a bad day with dieting, but you just start the next day and you carry on as you meant to. Both hugely psychological and very similar, having done a lot of both of them over my life. So it doesn't matter how long it takes to pay it off, but the feeling you get, I always loved breaking through the big barriers. So when I got my debt below £10,000, when I got it to 4 figures rather than 5, but the other thing I used to do, actually, whilst I was paying off my debt, was I built up a small emergency fund, not a big one. So what I was doing was I was paying off, say, £300 off my debt, because I was paying off the minimum plus any extra I could afford each month. Then I was trying to put half of that into my emergency fund, just because I wanted to build up. I think it was like £3,000 or £5,000 I built up, because if the washing machine broke, or those inevitable things that happen, I really tried to have that money set aside to pay for that, rather than, obviously it didn't work when it came to the summer holidays. I messed it up, but I did try to have the savings there as well.
I think having an emergency fund, it smooths out a lot of the problems. It means that you're not turning every little small drama into a crisis if you've got the emergency fund there. If you look at a lot of bloggers and online and what's doing, I mean, to be honest, this is far more important if you're in the States because of medical problems. And at least in this country, we got the NHS.
Yeah.
So a lot of the real emphasis in the States on having to have a good sized emergency fund before you even start paying off the debt, I think comes from the sort of health situation. But, you know, even 3,000 is great, but, you know, even having £500 is going to get you through, you know, an unexpected problem with your car service or a new washing machine. Or, you know, the kids managing to go straight through 2 sets of school shoe sizes in 3 weeks or something. It does happen. So it really can help. When you're paying off credit card debt, of course, you've always got the credit card there as your, you know, absolute fallback. Your kids aren't going to go to school with no shoes on their feet because you've got there as an asset. So you've got there as a bit of a fallback. But it does help, you know, particularly if your income's erratic, then it's more important. And particularly if you've got a mortgage, you get so little help from the benefit system in this country. If anything really goes badly wrong with your health or your employment, you get hardly any help with a mortgage. The help that you do get doesn't come on for 9 months. So it's more, people with a mortgage are more exposed than somebody who's renting. And also if you're single, you're more exposed. Because if there's 2 of you, you know, again, one person can have a problem with their income, but the other person is still bringing in some money. So single parent with a mortgage, it's a pretty exposed situation.
That's me.
To be in. Yeah, it was. Yes.
I have income protection insurance. Which kicks in after 3 months. It's not as expensive as it sounds if you're listening. So that's an insurance you can take out, which will provide you with an income if you get ill. So mine kicks in after 3 months, and I think it gives me like £2,500 a month. It depends on things like your health and your age and all these kind of things. But I pay £34 a month for my income protection insurance. That gives me a huge amount of reassurance because, as you say, it's just me. I've got no one to fall back on, and I'm self-employed, and I have a big mortgage. Although just about to go down because I'm moving house, and I'm going to knock £100,000 off my mortgage.
Well, wow.
Yes,
that's
£100,000.
Yes.
So I'm very excited. Yes, so we divert into a different subject there. So yeah, it's I think so we covered quite a lot there about if your debt is manageable, you can afford to pay the monthly payments, and we've also explained quite well there how you need to, if you make it more than monthly payments, you'll pay off the debt quicker. Try to increase your income, reduce your expenditure. Go back to episode 3 to understand how to do that, how to cut back your budget. And
it does go faster if you keep up with it. It does feel really slow at the start, but it does pick up speed. And the other great thing about this snowballing, debt avalanche, any of this, is at the end of it, you are going to end up with a fantastic credit record. Because you've made all these payments, and your credit card utilization is going down and down and down, and this just looks great. So it's if you can do it, this is a way you clear your debts as fast as possible. It takes determination, but you are going to end up with a great credit record as well.
So I paid off my 16 grand in 2 years. I had a pretty miserable 2 years doing that, but I paid it off. It's 2 years of my life. I also, everybody knows about this, I also separated from my husband 2 months after I paid off that debt. Interestingly, I can't go into too much detail about it, but it was all very related. So paying off the feeling you have when you pay off that debt, it's such a weight off your shoulders, the clarity you suddenly get in your head of, I suddenly don't have all that money I'm paying off each month. I've now got some freedom, and maybe, I mean, I obviously went quite extreme with my decisions after paying off that debt. But it's just the mental health benefits are just incredible. So and I've not, so that was 2019, I've not put any more money on a credit card unless it's, you know, I put my monthly spend on, but I pay it off in full each month because I get benefits from my credit cards.
Exactly what I do. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not anti-credit card in any way. I know that they have a purpose, and of course there are some things that happen in life that we can't afford, and we need credit at points in our life to pay for things. So 2 years to pay it off. But then after I paid it off, I still had a car loan, which I took out when I was in loads of debt. But I've just paid off my PCP car loan, and I paid off the balloon payment in September. So I'm officially consumer debt free.
Apart from your mortgage.
Apart from that's not consumer debt. That's it is. But maybe then
it's good debt.
Good debt and bad debt.
Yeah. The thing about your mortgage is, you know, first of all, it's letting you live rent free somewhere. So you're actually kind of getting an economist will say you're getting an implied income from that, because it's what you're not having to pay out in rent. And it's also an asset which is, well, appreciating, or at least it's not depreciating, not like your car, which goes down in value every year. So that's the difference between good debt and bad debt. Good debt is something where you're buying something long term that you can't afford any other way, because not many people can buy a house without a mortgage, which is going to give you something you really need, a place to live. And which the asset is appreciating. And there's a similar thing in the way to student loans, because that's an investment in your future career. So that will give you payback in the future. So you can think of those as being good debts. Student loans is a bit controversial, but you know, you're still getting something very positive for the rest of your life from that. But you compare that to credit cards. You know, you're putting the holiday on the credit card, clothes on the credit card, furniture on the credit cards. You know, if you're only making the minimum payments to the credit cards, those shoes that look like a bargain in a sale, you'll end up paying 2 or 3 times what you actually pay because of all the interest you pay on them over the time. And the shoes would have gone in the bin after 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
That's not an asset. You can still be paying them back after more than 3 years.
Yeah. I suppose then, what about like a home improvement loan?
Yeah.
That's possibly a good debt, isn't it?
It is. I mean, that's similar to basically taking out a larger mortgage.
Yeah.
With all of these things, you know, you can pay too much for things. And you know, you can pay too much for houses. You've taken the choice to move to a house which costs less. You could have moved to a larger house, or a fancier house, or one with a bigger garden or something, for the same price, but you've chosen to pay less. So even with houses, which is a good debt, you've got a choice over how much you want to pay. And when it comes to home improvements, you can pay 10,000 to redo your kitchen, or 50,000 to redo your kitchen. How much it adds to the value of your house, that probably depends on how tatty it was at the start, and what all the other houses in your road are like. So, you know, if you've got much the same sort of size house as everybody else, and you've all got a fairly small back garden, and you take out a large loan to put in a huge conservatory,
probably
it's not always going to add that much to the value of your house, because it's eaten up all the garden. But you know, you can also make the house sort of if you convert the attic and you dig a basement, and all the other houses in the road are sort of 3-bed houses, and you've somehow got 7 beds, and you're probably not going, you know, it's not really going to perhaps added as much to the value of your house as you think all those extra bedrooms might. So home improvements, you can overspend on them, but it's probably a cheaper way to do it. It's certainly a cheaper way to do it than putting it on a credit card.
Yeah, yeah. And some, like, so I'm obviously in the middle of selling a house and buying a house, and it's gonna, so right, I'm moving from a house that's nearly 500,000, and I'm going down to a house which is about 350, 375. I'm relocating closer to Cambridge, because I'm in Nebworth in Hertfordshire at the moment, moving to a place called Royston. Very beautiful place. So, but moving, it's going to cost about, I've estimated 20 to 25 grand, because you've got that chunk of stamp duty that I have to pay. And obviously I've missed all of the stamp duty things from COVID. Just the selling fees of the house, because I went with an estate agent because I'm not great at trusting those online people.
Yeah.
Tried it, it's not worked in the past, but that was 3 grand. The legal fees are like another sort of 2 or 3 grand, so it adds up. And I'm not going to move, because I'm a single mum. I'm not moving by myself. I'm going to employ like packers and movers. God knows how much that will cost. But yeah, so sometimes you think for that 25 grand, it might be worth staying in your own house and doing that home improvement. I don't know, but we're digressing again. But what I will say about loans is, and credit cards and any form of debt, it relates to your credit rating, as we've already alluded to. The better your credit rating, the lower the interest rates you will get on loans.
Yeah.
So do your research, make sure you look at comparison sites. Don't necessarily trust the ones that are at the top of the comparison site, because they pay to get there. And yeah, just do your research, and also look into your credit rating. So credit rating is a little bit complicated, isn't it, because it's with like 3 different agencies. So you need to check Experian,
Equifax,
TransUnion, otherwise known as Credit Karma.
Credit Karma's the free report you can get on the TransUnion one. So you can now get free reports on all 3 of the credit reference agencies. You never need to pay for one, because you used to have to sign up for their free 1-month offers, and then they made it so difficult to cancel it.
I know.
But now you can get a free report for every one of them. There's Credit Karma on TransUnion, there's Clear Score on Equifax, and Money Saving Experts Credit Club covers Experian. So you can get them all for free. The snag about these free reports, because they're perfectly good reports, they've got all the right information on them, is they're basically, you don't realize this, they're funded by advertising. When they say, oh, you're pre-approved for this loan, or you would probably get 90% chance of qualifying for this credit card, they are selling you more credit.
Yes. And
I've come across people who've just been tempted by that and said, oh, that looks, I think I'll have that. And they hadn't really intended at this point to go in and take a loan or something like that. But if you do want to take a loan, these are not even, there's no pretense here that these are the best on the market for you. This is advertising, which you are clicking on. So, if you think this loan, which quotes an APR of something or other, you think that sounds all right. For a start, you might not get that APR. Yeah. When you actually apply for one, you may get offered a higher one, but you may definitely be able to get somewhere cheaper. And that's a real problem with these free credit reports. It's good to have to not pay 30 quid a month to get one of these reports. But you've got to really be aware that you are the advert. Whenever you're being given something for free, the saying is you are the product. They are selling, you are being sold as advertising fodder. And that's how they make their money. These aren't necessarily the cheapest credit you can get.
Yeah. Very good point. Well made. I'm now thinking about all those marketing emails, because I subscribe to Credit Karma. I get an email at least once a week offering.
Yeah, the Credit Karma are nuts, aren't they? Always gone, have a look at your report, it's gone down. And you think, look, it's always gone down 5. I don't care. Tell me if it goes down 50 because there's something odd going on. And then they keep sending ridiculous numbers of emails, and that's because they make money when you click through and buy some credit off them. It's a big racket. The whole credit scoring thing is a huge, huge racket to get you to take out more debt.
Yes. So we are encouraging you to get to a position where you don't have any debt, apart from your mortgage, apart from your good debt. So shall we talk about people who have problem debt, who can't afford to make their minimum repayment?
Yeah. Well, let's talk first of all about those sort of people in the middle, the people who might be able to afford to make them if they cut back a bit.
Right. Yeah.
And here it's just really important to be realistic about how much you can cut back. So we talked about dieting earlier. You know, it's like saying, oh, well, I'm going to go on a diet and I'm only going to eat grapefruits. You'll lose a lot of weight. You'll get really fed up with it very, 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 very quickly, but you will lose weight. But you can't keep this up. You literally cannot keep up that sort of diet. And the same thing applies if you're going for an extreme version. So sometimes I will see as debt advisor somebody who's written down what they think their expenses are. And I say, well, this is great because it says you've got, £300 spare at the end of the month. Is this what happens? They go, no, I don't have any.
But it's a load of rubbish.
Month at all. And they don't know why, because they haven't checked up what they put on this against what they actually are spending, or they've actually decided, well, they're not going to go out and they're going to stop smoking, and they're not going to buy any clothes, and they're going to stop buying anything off Amazon. And you're not going to do this, are you? You can do it for a month. It's quite, some people, if they want to build up an emergency fund, like the idea of kick-starting the whole thing by not spending anything and putting as much as possible into the emergency fund for the first month. That's quite a positive, good thing to go for.
Yeah.
But you can't keep it up. Well, especially if you've got children. But even if it's just you on your own, you've got to be realistic about what you can live on and how long it's going to take you to clear your debts.
Yeah.
If you knew you could clear the whole lot in a year, well, you might decide to sign up for hair shirt for a year if it's just you. But if it's going to take 3-4 years, you're going to need new jeans.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to need some clothes. That your car is going to have some problem in the next 3 or 4 years. I guarantee it's going to need something extra doing to it. So, and you're not going to get through without buying new books or listening to Spotify or something, whatever your way of keeping yourself entertained,
whatever brings you joy.
There's got to be enough of that for you to carry on, because it's a lovely feeling when your debt is actually going down, and you can sort of tick off and you can see you're really making progress. But you can't live on that sort of lovely feeling. You also need some sort of you need to be able to get through life, and you can't live on beans on toast for 3 or 4 years. So for the people in the middle, you've got to find out this middle way. So, if you like hopping off to Michelin-starred restaurants 3 times a month, you probably should stop. If you have Deliveroo popping around 5 times a week and you're best friends with all the Deliveroo drivers, you need to cut that back. I'm not saying you need to stop it entirely, but the 5 times a week needs to go down to how about once a week as a start. And you can get into these habits, if you've got a busy job or a long commute or both, that is just the easy thing to do, and you need to find ways round that. So you've got stuff in the freezer, you've got quick meals, you can plan your meals in advance. So whatever your weakness is, find a way around it. If your weakness is clothes shopping, make a challenge of only buying secondhand clothes. You can have the fun of looking through secondhand shops if that's what you like spending your time doing. So find your problem, try and find ways to reduce it and trim back, and then see, can you now pay your minimum debts? If you can, you're off on your snowballing.
Yeah.
If you can't, you need to talk to a debt advisor. Well, you can do it yourself, but a debt advisor can really, really help.
Yeah.
If you find yourself unable to make the minimum payments to the debts after making some sensible economies in what you're doing. And the first thing a debt advisor does is income and expenditure and a list of your debts. It's those three things are the fundamentals. And the things the debt advisor does, which most people perhaps they sort of do instinctively, but they don't. But a debt advisor does this absolutely as the first stage. Is we divide your debts up into priority debts and non-priority debts.
Right.
And priority debts are not the debts that shout loudest when you don't pay them. Priority debts are debts where something bad goes wrong if you don't pay them.
Right.
So rent and mortgage, pretty much everybody realizes that rent and the mortgage are their most important ones, because if you don't pay those, you lose your house. You should basically be paying those in unless, the alternative is not eating. Probably food comes first rather than the house, but in all other circumstances you want to be paying your mortgage and you want to be paying your rent. Yep.
So let's say I can't afford to pay my mortgage from October onwards. How soon will I lose my house?
That depends on whether you talk to your mortgage company. Yeah. You can do an ostrich act. If you just refuse to talk to your mortgage company, you will get an increasingly agonized set of letters coming through. First of all, it'll say, you don't seem to have paid your mortgage. Then the next one will have said something like, you've now missed a second mortgage payment, Miss Beattie. We really want to talk to you about this. If you've got problems, we'd like to talk to you. And they go through increasingly threatening ones, and they start sending you formal ones which say you need to take debt advice if you do, and about this, and we've got the right to go to court, and there's a whole series of formal processes a mortgage lender has to go through to take your house, and it's quite long, but it will go through a lot faster if you don't talk to them. As soon as you talking to them, most mortgage lenders don't want to do any of this. All they want you to do is start paying the mortgage again, because that's an easy life for them and it's their cheap way. They don't want to have to take your house and sell it. That's a real hassle for them. So most mortgage lenders absolutely want to help you to come to an agreement. But that comes into when I was saying you've got your priority debts and your non-priority debts. If you can show your mortgage company that you stopped paying your non-priority debts, so the little money you've got because you're sick or your universal credit isn't being paid yet or whatever, the little money you've got is going to your mortgage. Yeah. Even if it isn't your full mortgage payment, they're going to know that you're trying. Whereas if you're not talking to them and they can see from your credit record that you still seem to be paying your HSBC credit card. Yeah. Well, what are they supposed to think? It doesn't look to them like you're very serious. So the point about the priority debts and the non-priority debts is the priority debts come first. So mortgage and rent, council tax is a priority debt. Okay. First, legally, because you can go to prison for not paying your council tax. Right. That almost never happens. We're talking under 100 people in the country. Still 100 too many, but it's really, really rare. But the very practical reason why council tax is a really, really important debt is they go to court faster and send around the bailiffs faster than any other consumer debts. You stop paying your credit card, you do an ostrich act, you won't see a bailiff for years. Really? At least a year. Oh, yes. It takes a long while for a credit card to get so fed up with you, they sell the debt on to a debt collector. Yeah. Then the debt collector tries, and they try to get you to pay, and then they go to court for a CCJ, and then they get to try to pay that. And only after that can they actually send the bailiffs round. This takes a long, long while. And that would cost them a fortune. Yeah, but you'll end up paying it. But for council tax, if you stop paying your council tax now, the chances are you'll be in court in 4 months' time. Oh, wow. If you refuse to talk to the council. If you talk to them again and make an arrangement, it goes much slower. And after you go to the council, after they get, it's not a CCJ, it's called a liability order for council tax, They will then want you to pay that, and that can end up with the bailiffs in a couple of months if you don't make an arrangement to pay. So the practical reason why council tax is a priority debt isn't because you can go to prison, even though legally you can. It's because they will go to court faster and send the bailiffs round faster, which puts huge amounts of fees onto your debt. So council tax is really a key debt to pay. Then there's your utility bills. So we're talking gas and electric here, because you can be cut off in the end or put onto a prepayment meter. You actually can't be cut off for water in this country anymore, but you can technically be cut out. Again, you're not going to be cut off unless you do an ostrich act and you ignore them, but it makes them another priority debt. Your TV license, that's a priority debt if you if you need one, because you can be sent to prison for not paying your and of course you don't actually have to pay. Not everybody has to have a TV license these days if you genuinely never watch live TV. You know, if you always watch Netflix or whatever, you don't actually need a TV license. But if you do, then you can be sent to prison. So it's another one. There are things like magistrates, courts, fines, and a few oddities like that. Child support payments are another priority debt. So all these, sorry?
What about tax?
Tax is definitely a priority debt for the self-employed. Yes. Well, most people, you know, if you're not self-employed, it's just kind of gets taken from your salary anyway. But for the self-employed, absolutely. And if you've got problems as self-employed, tax problems or any other sorts of problems, the best people to talk to are business debt line.
Okay.
So they're a charity who specialise in the self-employed and people with very small limited companies.
I didn't know about them.
They're very, very good. You heard of National Debt Line?
Yeah.
Right, Business Debt Line, they're their sister organisation.
Got you.
So they're very good for anyone who's got problems with their business. They don't know if they can afford to pay the tax. They don't know if they're solvent. They don't know what to do. Because a lot of people who've got small businesses, their business affairs can get badly mashed up with their personal affairs, and it can be difficult to sort of separate them out. And Business Debt Line are really, really good at doing that. Mine
are a little bit like that. Yeah.
Get different accounts.
I do have different accounts.
Good.
I promise you.
Good.
Sometimes they.
Yeah, they do. You know, there's the phone and the car, and it's not easy, but it's particularly if you're not sure whether your business is really making money or not. If it can be easy to sort of fool yourself if it's all mashed up with your own personal expenses. So there's that. So how do we get onto this one?
We were talking about priority.
Oh, priority debts. Yes, tax, VAT, income tax, definitely priority debts. So you have to pay those, and if you've got arrears on any of those, you have to make an arrangement to pay those. So you haven't paid your council tax for a few months, you have to phone up, make an arrangement to pay the arrears and start paying your new council tax.
So it'll end up costing you more because you'll pay your actual amount plus a chunk of the arrears.
Yeah, you have to pay the next month's, and the same with effectively with the electricity and gas. You've got to keep up with your current bills going forwards. I mean, you know, energy prices are really going up at the moment. There is help you can get from the energy companies. There's something called the Warm Home Discount, which you can apply for, which is £140 a month off your electricity bill if you're on certain benefits. That can help. It's been frozen at £140 for a long while whilst energy prices carry on going up, but this year, every little helps if you're on a low benefit.
Is that £140 for a year?
Yes, it's just paid in as one amount off your bill somewhere between about November and March. Normally, it depends on your.
£140 isn't very much.
Nope, but it's better than nothing. But there are trust funds. There are places that you can get help if you've got a massive arrears on your electric. Go to your local citizens advice they'll see where you can get some help with those.
Yeah.
But the idea is, from a debt advisor's point of view, is any arrears on any of those priority debt are the things which have to be sorted out first.
Yes.
So you can kind of get on a straight and narrow path of clearing those.
Yes.
And once you've done that, you know how much money you've got left.
Yes.
From your essential expenses and your priority debts and any arrears on those bills, you've got an amount which is left, and that's all that's available for the non-priority debts. And it doesn't matter what your minimum payments are. If you've only got £64 left, then you have to divide up that £64 between your non-priority debts.
To explain, so let's go through all the different non-priority debts. So you've got credit cards, loans.
Yep, normal unsecured loans. If you've got a secured loan on your house, it's a priority debt, but normal unsecured loans.
Car loan.
No, car is a priority debt because it's secured on your car.
Ah, okay.
If you're taking a bank loan out, that's a normal unsecured loan. But if you've got car finance, so HP, PCP, or leasing, if you don't pay those, they're going to take your car. Or a logbook loan, horribly expensive loans based on your cars. You don't want to go near those. No. So those are secured debts. Those are in the priority debt pile, because the bad thing that happens is you lose your car. So unsecured loans, credit cards, catalogs, payday loans. That's just basically an expensive version of unsecured loans. Guarantor loans, they aren't legally a priority debt. They're horrible if you've got them, because if you've got real money problems and you've got a guarantor loan, you can be desperate to pay your guarantor loan because you want to protect your mother or your friend that's your guarantor. But legally, they're not a priority debt. So this is one of the occasions where you talking to a debt advisor can really help. There's no easy solution, but there's a particularly nasty sort of debt you can get into. All sorts of odd loans.
Buy now, pay later.
Buy now, pay later is a sort of debt. Yeah, I call it debt in disguise because people don't really think of it as being a debt.
Big gripe of mine, and I've written a lot about this and talked about it.
Well, so if we go back to, when it used to be when people were in their early 20s, they got the first credit card and the first overdraft, and they suddenly maxed those out and they got increased and they spent some more. And then they spent the next 5 years or 10 years trying to pay off that. I think we're going to have the same thing happening again with Klarna and Lay-By and all the other ones. People take the first ones out because they look easy and they sound sensible, doesn't it? No interest,
easy money,
payments. But if you get quite a few of these, they can be hard to track how much you've spent overall. And we're starting to hear the anecdotal stories of people being turned down for mortgages because their mortgage looks at your bank statements and they go, okay, you're paying £350 a month to your buy now, pay later. That's coming off your affordability because you've done it for the last 6 months. And we're going to assume you say that's £350 less. They think you can afford to pay because that's going out of your salary. You might think, well, I'll just stop buying them. But to the mortgage lender, they don't look at what you might do in the future. They look at what you've actually done over the last 6 months. So if you're coming up to a mortgage, it's a pretty good idea to not take out any of those.
Yes.
Okay. So these are the non-priority debts. And basically, you can do 3 things. You can ignore them, which isn't a terribly good idea, but nothing horribly instantly goes wrong if you ignore them, apart from the letters and the phone calls and the texts. You can phone them up and say, I can't afford this because I've lost my job, my income's dropped, whatever, and I can only afford to pay you £5 a month or £1 a month, or actually in some cases nothing. If you know your if you can say, I've got rent arrears and council tax arrears and I have no money spare at all, or my universal credit isn't yet being paid, literally you can pay them nothing sometimes. But if it's good, if possible, to pay a token £1 a month, because that shows you're not ignoring them.
Yeah.
And obviously it's not going to pay off your debt.
Mm.
You know, you might have £850 on a card or something. Clearly paying £1 a month is not going to ever clear that, even if they freeze interest, which they should. But it's kicking the can down the road until your situation gets better. That might be it gets better because you start to earn more. Perhaps, you know, you can go back to full-time work once your children are in primary school. Or perhaps once you've paid off your rent arrears, then you can actually you've got a bit more free money, and you can keep up with that, and you can then pay a bit more towards your unsecured debts. But if you've got really nothing left, and there will be people in this situation at the moment, particularly with the cut to universal credit that's coming up, that all they can do is keep up with the priority debts, and even that's going to be a struggle for them, that they can pay nothing. And you just have to talk to your creditors and say, I can't do that. You know, I've got these debts. The creditors know that they are bottom of the food pile here. That, you know, they know that your priority debts come first. So although they will send you cross letters, if you talk to them and you explain your situation, they will agree to take a token payment. And they should agree to freeze interest and stop adding charges to it. So although your £1 isn't going to clear that 850 debt, at least it's not getting worse every month. If you do an ostrich act, they're going to carry on adding interest every month to that credit card. So if you can make that phone call, it's really good. If you've got mental health problems, it's tough. Get a friend come and sit with you. Just not quite hold your hand, but make you a cup of tea and supply you with chocolate biscuits while you make the phone call. Or you can talk to a debt advisor. And the debt advisor can do it for you. If you've got a bit more money, so you're not paying £1 this £850 debt, but you know, you can actually pay £30 or £40 or something, then it will pay off this debt in time. And those are payment arrangements. They harm your credit record because they're recorded as payment arrangements, and after a while you can get defaulted, which isn't that much to worry about, because often defaults turn out to be better in it because they drop off your credit file sooner than the payment arrangement does. But if you've got a lot of creditors, or you don't want to make these phone calls, and you've got some money to distribute, probably what you need is something called a debt management plan. And these can be run by a company on your behalf. And here you make one payment a month to the debt management company. And they take that and they distribute it between your creditors. The advantage for you is you don't have to keep talking to all these creditors. And you only make one payment, and you can arrange for that to come out, you know, after you get paid, so it's nice and easy for you to budget for.
But that debt management plan and the companies that offer that, there are some trusted good companies, and there are a lot of cowboys.
Yes, it's not so much, well, you've got the cowboys and the trusted ones, you kind of want to avoid the cowboys, but the other important distinction is whether they actually charge you fees. Because there are some, I would not describe them as cowboys, but they do charge a fee for running a debt management plan. So if you're then paying them £160 a month, you might think this is great because, you know, your minimum payments were £400 or something. So you're very happy to do this. But out of the £160, they might be taking £50 out for their fees. So only £110 is going to your creditors. But if you go to one of the three big debt management plan providers who don't charge, then they get paid in a different way by your creditors, but all your money is paid off your debts. And the three big ones are Step Change, who's the biggest one, Pay Plan, and Christians Against Poverty. And so if you go to any of those three, they will, all your money every month is going off your debts. And if interest is being frozen, you can work out how long it's going to be, months. And you can assume that the interest will be frozen, because these days people do freeze interest and you can put in a complaint if they don't. So if you work that out and it comes to 3 years or 5 years or 6 or 7 years, you might think that's fine. If it comes to 15 years or 24 years, you've got a lot of debt and you're paying off such a small amount. Unless you've got a good reason to think that's going to change, which doesn't include winning the lottery, you really think that's going to change, you know, next year you can go back to work and the moment you're at home with the kids and you're on benefits, that's a complete change. So, but unless there is something really significant that's going to change, if you're looking at a long debt repayment thing, even if interest is frozen, then you should probably be looking at one of the forms of insolvency in this country. So that's where a debt advisor, a good debt advisor, can really help. Because in England and Wales, Northern Ireland, we got 3 different sorts of debt insolvency. Bankruptcy, which everybody's heard of. Yeah. Something called a debt relief order, which is like bankruptcy, but it's meant for people who don't have a house, who don't have a car worth more than £2,000, whose total debts are less than £30,000. Yeah. And who are on benefits or have very little spare income left if they are working. Yeah. In that case, a debt relief order is the best solution for you because it wipes out your debts in a year. No payments, £90 fee up front. But the other sort of insolvency is an IVA. Oh, yeah. An individual voluntary arrangement. Yeah. And the problem, IVAs are great debt solutions if you've got assets to protect, like a house with equity. Yeah. But they are being missold to thousands of people in this country. Yeah. If you look on Facebook or Instagram and you see adverts, or at the top of Google, if you just Google for debt help, you see adverts which say, wipe off 81% of your debt with a little known government debt solution. That is an IVA. And it's true, you can wipe off debt with an IVA. It means you have to make monthly payments for 5 years or 6 years if you've got a house. Mm-hmm. What they don't tell you is that 30% of IVAs fail. Right. Because people can't afford the payments. You might think £140 a month is great compared to what you're being asked to pay at the moment, but that doesn't actually mean you can afford £140 a month. How realistic is your budget? Is it one of these budgets which doesn't have enough in for school uniform and doesn't have anything in for smoking, and it doesn't have anything in for entertainment? Are you really going to live like that for 5 or 6 years? What happens if it looks right at the start, but your income drops? Sometimes you get the IVA payment reduced. If it's £140, you might be able to get it reduced to £100, but they're not going to reduce it to £20. Mm. So you can find your IVA fails and you're left back with all your debts. Oh, that's what happens. Yes. And some of these people should just have had bankruptcy or a debt relief order right at the start because they don't fail. Bankruptcy never fails. 1% of debt relief orders fail. The 1% of debt relief orders are normally where people have inherited a house from their parents. That's quite a nice way, in a way. You've suddenly got a lot of money and they stop your debt relief order, which is fair enough. But IVA's huge numbers of these are failing, and the firms never tell you that. Yeah, they just push. You can get big debt write-off. The other thing they don't push is that the amount of money you're paying at the start, that will increase if your income goes up. Mm-hmm. So this isn't really explained to you. So it might have looked at the start like you were getting 81% written off. But people can end up paying back more than their debts because they got the IVA fees as well. Yeah. And the IVA fees start at about £3,500, which is why there's such a lot of advertising for them. Wow. Nobody makes money No debt advice service makes money by suggesting you go bankrupt. If they set up a debt relief order for you, because a debt relief order has to be done by a debt advisor, the debt agency gets paid £10 for that. And you probably need 2 or 3 appointments to actually get the whole application ready. So they lose money effectively every time they do a debt relief order. So nobody advertises for debt relief orders. The ones that get pushed are the ones which, surprise, surprise, make the commercial firms that offer them a large amount of money. So IVAs can be good, but don't go to any of these advertising firms which are talking about a little known government debt solution that can write off 60% or 85% or some. They've all decided 81% sounds good, because apparently people think that's more authoritative and more reliable than saying 80%. 80% looks like a sort of round figure. 81% looks like they've got to actually have that written down somewhere to quote, but they're just making this up.
Yeah. So the sort of the baseline rule is that if you can't afford your minimum repayments on your priority debts and your non-priority debts, go see a debt advisor. And the best people to go see are Citizens Advice Bureau.
Citizens Advice, yes.
Step Change.
Christians National Debt Line.
National Debt Line.
Christians Against Poverty. And Business Debt Line if you're self-employed.
Business Debt Line. Just to say about Christians Against Poverty, because I've done some work with them, they are not a hugely religious, they do things with more heart. That's how I...
Yeah, they do. I mean, obviously some people don't like the idea. If you really don't like the idea, they'd go and talk to one of the other people. But, they're not going to try and convert you. And they're certainly not going to say, oh, we won't take you on because you're not a member of your local church. You don't have to get, it's not like getting married in church.
Exactly.
You don't have to get a vicar to approve you or something like that. They are.
And they're all free.
They are all free. And so, if you go to Christians Against Poverty or Citizens Advice and they say, actually, Lynn, you've got a house to protect, you're in a real mess, and IVA would be good for you, you're getting good advice from an unbiased source. And then you can walk into an IVA knowing what the problems are, but knowing it's a good option for you and you can make a sensible choice.
Yeah.
What is not good is if you just end up in the clutches of an IVA firm because you Googled for help with bailiffs and you click on somebody that looked like they were offering help with bailiffs. It turns out to be somebody flogging you an IVA who isn't going to tell you about debt relief orders or debt or bankruptcy. Yeah. Because all of these things have exactly the same bad effect on your credit record.
Yeah.
Some people think, oh, an IVA is better for your credit record than bankruptcy. It's not.
No.
Exactly the same.
No. So right, I don't want to. We need to end this podcast.
It goes on.
And I want to end on a positive note, just to say, the best thing you can do is to just take your head out of the sand and just look at what is going on, dig out all the paperwork, call those companies and just work out what the balance is, what the interest rates are, and add it up and see what that total is. And if you need advice, then I mean there's lots of people on, go to Sara's website, which is Debt Camel. There's an incredible community on Instagram, which is #debt-free community, #debt-free, who certainly supported me throughout my debt repayment journey. The positivity you get whenever you post and set up an anonymous account and share your progress on Instagram.
That's right. And the other thing is, don't ever worry about going to a debt advisor because you think your problem's too small or you think you can cope. Debt advisors quite like seeing people that are at the early stages, and we can talk to you about snowballing. It's lovely. We can have one appointment, we can explain it all to you, and you can go off knowing with confidence that this is a good option for you. But sometimes people can spend years saying, oh, my problem's too small. I don't need to go and take debt advice. And then suddenly they switch to, oh, my problem's too big, nobody can help me, so they don't go and take debt advice. So they carry on go and talk to a debt advisor, and you'll be told what your options are, and it's up to you. You'll be told what the pros and cons are, and it's up to you what the choice is. It's all in confidence.
Yeah.
And you will be supported. If you'll find you're talking to somebody who isn't supportive, that's probably the sign you're not talking to the right person to try to get debt advice.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that was so informative.
Hey.
That was a lot of information. So yeah, there will be so many people who will listen to this, and they'll be writing. I've scribbled pages of notes here, so other people will be doing the same thing. It's hugely helpful. So thank you for all you do in your website and your work on the internet to help people, because I know you're a really important resource and very well thought of by a lot of people.
Okay. And it's great having these sort of podcasts, getting people to find out about things. Because your steps are just perfect, talking about mindset and budgets and debts and things. This is a good way into talking about looking at these problems. People come in from different angles. But this is if somebody's uncertain or feeling lost, this is a good way in.
Yeah, just go for a walk, stick on the podcast, listen to it for an hour, and learn. So your website is
debtcamel.co.uk,
and your Instagram
debtcamel, all one word,
and same on Twitter, isn't it?
Same on Twitter as well, yes, and Facebook.
And Facebook. Very good. But yeah, no, it's a great name because it's so memorable. But thank you ever so much for this conversation. I'm loving every conversation I've had in this podcast series. It's so informative. Thank you so much, and hopefully I will get to see you in real life at some event in the future
before Christmas. That would be lovely, but
it would be so nice.
Otherwise early next year, I hope.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sarah. It's great.
Thank you.